I think my grandmother probably had the biggest influence in starting the Learning Connexion, even though she died sometime before the school was born. So her family came out from Ireland at a time towards the end of the potato famines, and it's hard to even comprehend the degree of poverty. 1.5 million people died of starvation, and of the others, 1 million who were able to left the country, and that's how my great-grandfather got to New Zealand. The thing about my grandmother, in the tough times she experienced, is she had a profound belief in education. My grandmother spent very little time at school. She went straight into this work situation, but she always regarded education as a means to liberation, and she saw it in two ways. Part of it was dealing with day-to-day practicalities, but the other part of education for her was about beauty, and she ended up writing lots of poetry, and I think that was a big part of what drove her. And she passed on to my father the sense that learning was of enormous value. And a curious way this occurred was through a belief in encyclopedias. When I was fairly young, the household suddenly got one of these marvellous sets of encyclopedias, which at the time we believed contained everything that was important to know about the world. I got pretty much into that kind of learning. I ended up getting the highest marks that had ever been achieved at my high school, and I thought the learning was going to lead to some kind of miracle, and precisely nothing happened. It was total anticlimax. In fact, really the only thing that happened was I got pimples. And I guess that took me into a kind of crisis, which was still bubbling away when I went to university. During the early time there, I got a terrible dose of pneumonia and nearly died. And at the time, I didn't realize that the pneumonia was actually trying to tell me something, in particular that I was on the wrong track. Eventually, someone suggested I run an art workshop, and I thought, oh well, this is pretty good. It would stitch together my art experience, and I'd do some teaching. And for some reason, I decided to do the workshop using dried cooking material like spaghetti, seeds, and so on. And it was an event that changed my life. What happened was, when they got into it, I suddenly saw inventiveness and play and sort of open-ended discovery, which had been the opposite of what had happened with the earlier learning, all the stuff that had not only frustrated me, but had literally made me sick. These people started playing, and it became an adventure, and they did interesting things with the food, and I called it the spaghetti miracle, because it really did change my life, other people playing with dried food. And then later, I decided I would actually test this out again. Now, you could say it's tempting fate to revisit a miracle. I did it with staff at TLC, and it was actually more miraculous the second time around. We did it mostly with spaghetti. We had a few seeds. This one, to me, shows engineering, it shows building, structure, architecture, and a sense of trying to reach high with this very brittle material. The idea here is balance, and it's playing with spaghetti in a way where the top unit actually moves, so you've got a kinetic sculpture made out of spaghetti. And the last one began just by sticking seeds on sellotape, sticky paper, creating a big square of this and putting it up in a window. And suddenly the seeds joined with the clouds, and you had what I thought became a work of art with a capital A. The clouds and the seeds all joined together, and it was an extraordinary piece of work, which I think ended up in the rubbish bin because it was very temporary and only took half an hour to make. I mean, these are fast works. Now, this is the sort of education that drives TLC. There's an openness about it, and it connects with the practical beliefs of my grandmother, But there's also, especially in the seed picture, a sense of the poetry. I thought of this expression, the magic of drawing. And the magic of drawing turned out to be the workshop that really launched TLC. And what had happened is we'd found that people learn to draw, and by which I mean learn to do a reasonable likeness of a face, sometimes just within a few minutes. And we began to get these results time and again. This is one of them, someone at the start of the day, second frame, in this case about 3 hours later, and they're drawing pretty well. One of our early students was a guy called Jan Junge, and his first picture illustrates that he was very much a total novice at drawing. And at the end of the same day, he produced this picture. He personally was shocked. He felt he should actually destroy the picture because suddenly he had something to live up to that he didn't think he could sustain. The drawing was something you could just almost switch on. And I think creativity is something you can switch on. What happens is suddenly the teacher is not in charge. It's not knowledge coming from on high down to you. So instead of being an individual thing, a competitive race, somehow everybody is involved and you learn from everyone. And you learn from the materials. When people are playing with spaghetti, before you can do much with it, you've got to understand how it behaves. Another thing which I think is important is the projects that we do involve risk-taking. And they're not risks where someone else can hold your hand and say, here's where you go, dear. You do it yourself. And that also is a freedom, because the encyclopedia learning takes you into a known point. Someone else has the answer. You're supposed to get there. I'm intrigued by the story about Einstein. When Einstein was 16, he actually imagined what it would be like to chase a beam of light. And it changed the 20th century. The processes that came out of that have been so spectacular. It started from imagining and moved from there. I think people so underestimate the power of imagination. Flicking back to the devastation in Ireland, one of the things about it was that it occurred because all the potatoes came from one parent potato. There was no diversity. So when a disease hit these potatoes, it nuked the lot. And I think what happens when you think in terms of creativity is creativity by its nature is about expanding our diversity. It is just so important. What's happening is we're having artists talking to each other. We have great diversity among the students, but they're also going out of the student setting. They're talking to the local industry people. They're talking to scientists. They're talking to anybody. They're talking to whoever shows up. And something about this makes a difference too, because as you dismantle those barriers, everyone in their little pigeonhole, that contributes to creativity. The diversity is enhanced. A number of things can happen with this. One can be that people become artists and become brilliantly good at it. They might become rich and famous. Over our period since 1988, when the school started, some of our graduates have done superbly well. And in the end, I don't think it much matters. It's not vital whether you become a brilliant artist, whether you become rich and famous. What actually matters, the first step, is achieving that kind of liberation, which I think is precisely what my grandmother believed in.